What's going on, everyone? Happy Friday to everyone. Hopefully everyone is doing well and that the weather is cooperating in your area to the way you want it to be. It is time now for the Friday edition of the Climate Update for Friday, January 26th, 2024. If you're new to my channel, this is where we do the daily climate update. We talk about weather headlines, stories, storm systems all around the world, and then we talk about the forecast in the United States. If this is something you're interested in, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel down below. Today we have 3 different records to talk about from around the world. We're going to go 2 international first and then 1 in the United States. In Spain, today meaning yesterday, temperatures in southern Spain yesterday reached just over 28°C, the second highest value recorded in January since 1985. And in case you're wondering, that is just over 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Mind you, in Spain, it is considered a winter month right now. Moving on now to Queensland. This is over in Australia. Birdsville breaks Queensland record for hottest January day with 49.4 C temperature. That equals out to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, 120.9 degrees Fahrenheit. Yes, that is a really hot day. That's not even factoring in any heat index they may be having right now. And that was as of 2:30 p.m. over there on Thursday. And then we come back to the United States, where a record was just set within the last couple hours. In Washington, D.C., the temperature hit 80 degrees. Now, that's just south of here by about 2.5, 3 hours. And the temperature here in northeast Philadelphia, I'm looking at my Davis weather station, it is 49 degrees. You go even further north, it's down into the low 40s. The Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania are in the 30s. So, yes, you're talking a 30 to 40 plus degree temperature difference between, say, New York and Washington, D.C. That is absolutely insane. It just shows how strong this warm front is that is stalled out right now because it's foggy here. While down there, as you can see here, the sun came out and it hit 80 degrees. All right, taking a look at the latest satellite picture around the country, the loop, and you can see we do have moisture that's gathering right now in portions of the Gulf of Mexico. That is yet another system, and you see this spin here that's over Texas and portions of New Mexico and Oklahoma. That is our next system that we're going to have to watch, and that is eventually going to develop into an area of low pressure. It's going to ride up the Appalachian Mountains and eventually transfer somewhere off of the mid-Atlantic coast. And yes, if you live up in Boston area, snow for you, rain changing to snow for you. Let's take a look at the national radar. You can see here, here's that system. It is starting to gather moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico. It will continue to do that. We have another system over the Great Lakes region and another one that is over portions of Maine and New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. And then we have yet another system that is starting to make its way onto the west coast. That is the first of what will be a long rotation, stormy stretch for the west coast. You're going to see day after day of unsettled weather in the Pacific Northwest, and then eventually California, things will get more active for you as well. Let's take a look at the national hazards map, and you can see here, there's not a lot going on in the west coast at this time. That's going to change. It's the east where we're starting to see things pop up. We have this flood concern that goes up from West Virginia back through portions of Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and even in Alabama. And there is the threat of flooding there. General 1 to 3 inches of rain is expected. There could be isolated amounts up to 4 inches. But then you see there's winter weather advisories up in Maine. That's for today's system. But now what has been introduced is these winter storm watches that are up for portions of Massachusetts and portions of New York State. They don't cover a large area, but yes, you're going to see some snow with this coastal system. We'll take a look at Boston National Weather Service's first snowfall map that has been put out for the event in just a little bit. Fog, it continues. There's no dense fog advisories right now in the mid-Atlantic, but it's there. If you're north of the Mason-Dixon line, say in southeast Pennsylvania, the fog, it has set back in. There's warmer air aloft, and then at the surface, like I said, temperatures are still in the 40s. Across the Great Lakes region, Midwest region, yes, still some fog there as well. As we get later into the weekend, that is finally going to clear out. Taking a look at the excessive rainfall risk, there is a slight risk of excessive rainfall down in Louisiana, Mississippi, southeast Arkansas, and portions of Alabama. Marginal risk surrounding that. Also marginal risk in Oklahoma and Texas. There's also a slight risk of excessive rainfall right along the Oregon-California border, and that is going to continue. And then as we come into tomorrow, there's a slight risk from northeast Alabama through Georgia, portions of North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and even into portions of Virginia and extreme southeast Kentucky, where we're going to see heavy rainfall as moisture is going to be streaming up out of the Gulf of Mexico from that area of low pressure, and there could even be a severe weather threat with this system as well. We'll talk about that in just a moment. You can see here, there's going to be widespread inch to an inch and a half amounts in the southeast today. Tomorrow is going to be wet as well, moving into the northeast, which is actually not going to be tomorrow. It's going to be tomorrow night into Sunday, where the wet weather is going to come in, and eventually it's going to turn white for some folks. Generally northwest of the I-95 corridor, aside from Boston area. And let's take a look at the days 1 through 7 precipitation amounts. And what you see here is that after that system, there is definitely some heavy rainfall threat from that system across the Appalachians. You can see general amounts of 1 inch to an inch and a half, though again, there could be localized 2 to 4 inches in the higher elevations where you get upsloping, where it generates more moisture to be wrung out of the atmosphere. And then on the west coast, we just had this big mess. Look at this here. In the Pacific Northwest, a general 3 to 6 inches of rain. Locally, higher amounts could be possible in some areas, and this is going to continue beyond the 7-day period. And you can see Southern California, Central California, 2 to 4 inches of rain over the next 7 days for you as well. Again, there could be localized higher amounts possible. Taking a look at the severe aspect of the weather forecast, marginal risk across Louisiana and portions of Mississippi. I do think there could be a wind threat that develops late overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. I'll show you that on the high resolution model in just a bit. And you can see tomorrow a slight risk has been introduced for portions of Alabama and Florida. Generally looking at a wind threat, though it would not surprise me to see a few spin-ups, maybe an isolated tornado or two cannot be ruled out with this setup. And that goes for all the way up into North Carolina and South Carolina, where there's 2% probabilities for tornado, and then, of course, in Alabama and Florida, where there's 5% probability for tornado. All right, taking a look at the latest 3 km NAM run, and you can see here, moisture is going to be gathering overnight tonight. Look what happens, and I'm going to take this a little bit more south so you can see here. You can see some thunderstorm activity gets going tonight over Louisiana into tomorrow morning. And that really gets organized here. I definitely think there is going to be a wind threat with this system. You can see here, a squall line forms and then starts moving east. Any of these little hooks that you see within this squall line, that's where there could be the isolated tornado threat. This system's going to continue east, and then it is going to start to get a little bit stronger, this area of low pressure. And moisture is going to start gathering over the mid-Atlantic region, as this will eventually start to transfer its energy to the coastal region. We're going to switch views now back to the United States view. You can see here, at this point, we are at Saturday night. Here's our storm system, and then take a look at the Pacific Northwest. You can see very heavy rainfall coming onshore in the Pacific Northwest. It's not going to be a nice weekend for you if you're up in the Northwest. Back to the east, as we go into Saturday night, you can see moisture continues to gather, and I'm going to change this to the northeast view, because this is where I want you to pay attention for. You can see very heavy rainfall, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, just starting to move into Philadelphia about 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning on Saturday night into Sunday. And first thing Sunday morning, if you're in southeast Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York City, it's going to be very wet. It's going to be moderate to heavy rainfall, periods of moderate to heavy rainfall, at least through the middle of the day. Then you might see a lull in the action as this low starts to transfer its energy to a secondary low somewhere over the Delmarva. And at this point, you can see Boston, you're starting out as rain, but watch what happens here. You can see the rain continues, but then the cold air, it tries to collapse as this low gets stronger. Just showers, drizzle, continuing for Philadelphia and New York City at this point. This is now moving into Sunday night. But Boston, you're dealing with heavy rain. Interior Massachusetts, um, heavy snow. And you can see here, that rain snow line, it's very close to Boston. And I do think that's where it's going to set up, somewhere just southeast of there. So wherever that sets up, that's going to determine how much snow you get. Southern Maine, southern New Hampshire, southern Vermont, this is looking like a sizable event for you, in my opinion. I think you could be dealing with several inches of snow. It's possible this storm system, as it pulls away, collapses enough cold air in that maybe some wet snowflakes mix in at the end in Philadelphia and New York City. But really, at that point, you're not dealing with a lot of moisture. But take a look at this. This is the end of the high-resolution NAMS run. You can see here, very heavy snow does come into the Boston area. So I think you're looking at several inches. And let's take a look at the RGM model as well. And this is the 12Z RGM. The 18Z run's coming in now, but we'll use the 12Z run. And you can see here, moisture gathers. It comes up into the mid-Atlantic. How much rainfall are we talking for the mid-Atlantic? Generally, an inch to an inch and a half. Localized 2-inch amounts would not surprise me, as these systems have been wetter than expected as of lately. And you can see on the RGM, it's a bit more northwest with that rain snow line, though it does collapse into the Boston area and provide some snow for you as the low starts to exit the area. And speaking of exiting, this storm will be moving out on Monday. You can expect some winds with this as well. 15 to 20 mile per hour sustained winds are possible. Gusts could go up to 30 to 40 miles per hour, especially along the coast. This is a fairly decent coastal system. May even be some minor coastal flooding and minor beach erosion as well. All right, snowfall amounts from the National Weather Service up in Boston. You can see here, they're going with just a general 1 to 2 inches with Boston, but if that rain snow line shifts a little bit further southeast, I think that Boston would be talking maybe more 2 to 4 or 3 to 5 inches. In the interior, they're going with a widespread 3 to 4, 2 to 3, with even 6 to 8 inches amounts in the higher elevations, just northwest of Worcester, Massachusetts. Look at this, 6 to 8 inches expected for you. Across portions of Connecticut, generally an inch or less along I-95. Northwest Connecticut, you could be talking 3 to 4, maybe 4 to 6 inches of snow. All right, let's talk about the longer range now. We want to first take a look at the GFS, and we can see on the GFS, talking about the West Coast, system after system, it continues. You get a little bit of a break on Monday, but look what happens on Tuesday. Here comes the next system, and you can see this one has very heavy rainfall. That's going to spread into California. In the east, generally average temperatures in the northeast. Still a lot of questions about what's going to happen up in the northeast beyond, say, the Wednesday time frame. There's a lot of discrepancy in the models. There's these pieces of energy that are going to be coming out of Canada. What happens with that remains to be seen. The GFS, the Canadian, the European, all three models are showing different solutions. Taking a look, continued here. This is brand new 18Z GFS coming in right now. You can see it just continues to be stormy in the West Coast. The mountain region, you're going to be talking about heavy snow. You could see multiple feet of snow. And then look as we head into late next week. Yes, Southern California, you get into the ball game. You could see anywhere from 1 to 2 inches of rainfall, maybe even localized 3-inch rainfall amounts. And look at this. Eventually, this system does get hung up in the mountains across the Rockies. And yes, you could see a long duration period of snow. And you can see on the GFS, speaking of the Northeast, look at this. Here's that system next weekend. Don't know what's actually going to happen with that. Each run, I'm just going back through previous GFS runs. Each run, the different solution. Now let's take a look at the European perspective for this real quickly. And you can see on the European, it's going to be unsettled in the Pacific Northwest first. Eventually that is going to shift its way to the southeast. As you can see, we're getting into the middle of next week now. Look at this. Very heavy rainfall in the Pacific Northwest and Northern California, eventually making its way through San Francisco down to Los Angeles. It's something we'll have to watch. Now taking a look at what the European does in the Northeast, you can see it tries to get some sort of a storm system going off the coast of Maine and Boston. Don't know if that's actually going to happen. When you're talking about energy that's coming down from Canada, oftentimes because of the lack of data up in Canada, things continuously change from run to run until we get closer in time. All right, let's talk about the temperature outlook for the long range. 6 to 10 day outlook. It's kind of a toss-up in the Northeast. They're going with above average, but again, should that system happen, it would end up being below average. For now, we'll just agree with the Climate Prediction Center, because why not? Above average in the Great Lakes, below average in the West Coast with all that storminess, well above average precipitation in the West Coast, below average in the Northeast, subject to change if any coastal system forms off of that energy that's going to come from the upper levels in the atmosphere. 8 to 14 day temperature outlook. Below average in the West Coast, above average in the Great Lakes, through the east, exceptions for Florida. And taking a look at precipitation, most of the country is above average, aside from the Northeast and Pacific Northwest in the 8 to 14 day period. I hope you enjoyed today's climate update. We will have another climate update again tomorrow with new snow totals that will come in for the New England region, and of course new information that we will get tomorrow on the ongoing storm systems in the West Coast and anything else that pops up around the world. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe to my channel down below. And if you have a comment, by all means leave one and share this with anyone you think may be interested in seeing this type of content. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all again tomorrow. Enjoy the weather wherever you are.